Good morning, everyone. Welcome, council, staff, residents, to our special council meeting for the 2025 budget. The date is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025, and we are being streamed live. So I'll call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock with the land acknowledgement. We are meeting today on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within. We honor their cultures and celebrate their commitment to this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Mohawk and Algonquin nations, whose traditional and unceded territory we are gathered upon today. Hastings County is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Since this is our budget meeting, last year I read this document that I thought sums up our responsibilities as it relates to taxes and budgets for our community. So if you bear with me for a minute, over the last decade or so, one political fad has done lasting damage to many municipal governments in Canada. The fad is the foolish commitment to keep tax increases at or below the rate of inflation, usually as set in the Consumer Price Index or CPI. This meant that many municipalities capped tax increases at 2 to 3% and often less, in some cases for decades. Of course, the cost of running a municipality has nothing to do with the basket of household goods that forms the CPI. Municipalities purchase things that have very different inflationary pressures, such as concrete, road salt, fire trucks, construction materials, specialized software, buses, asphalt, and dozens of other commodities. Moreover, the biggest cost for municipalities is wages and benefits, many for unionized staff with costs set through collective bargaining, or in the case of emergency services, often by attrition. One Canadian city, which I won't name, had a major taxpayer go under about 12 years ago. The mayor had campaigned on keeping the tax rate increases at or below the rate of inflation. Council raided the reserves to keep taxes down and then just slowly starved the city. After a decade of 1 to 2% tax increases, the total spending power of the city has shrunk by roughly 21%, and the discretionary reserves are largely depleted. Over the same period, the city grew by 15%. That is municipal government at its most irresponsible. While the attraction of the CPI fad is obvious, let's be blunt. It may be great politics, but it's dreadful governance. It means pushing big tax increases to the next generation of property owners and future councils, especially if it results in underfunding infrastructure maintenance. If council is also raiding reserves to keep tax increases down, they are guilty of the added sin of using public money for patently political purposes. The CPI fad has also kept the conversation on tax rates unhelpfully focused on percentages and not dollar amounts. Politicians and the public gasp at the thought of a 6% tax increase. It's double a 3% tax increase. It is, but in most municipalities, the difference between a 3% tax increase and a 6% tax increase is about $90 a year for the average house. That can certainly be a burden for some, but letting key infrastructure rot and fail, or underfunding the operating budget to avoid a $90 a year tax increase is the height of bad governance. Also remember that the average Canadian household spends over $2,500 a year on internet, TV, and phones, add a similar amount dining out. Municipalities need to talk about MPI, the Municipal Price Index, not CPI. MPI is almost always greater than CPI. And using discretionary reserves to reduce tax increases, especially reserves intended for future public amenities, is simply stealing from the future generations to help council get reelected. Even if it's not illegal, it's unethical and dreadful governance. Thank you. Next, I need a motion that the agenda for the special budget meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Marmorn Lake for Tuesday, March 25th, 2025 be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Eric, second. Ron, any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, moving forward to the staff reports. The first one is from the municipal clerk, public budget correspondence. There's the Dorothy Caverly redacted, Heart of Hastings hospice request, Anne McNeil redacted, Ingrid Lusty redacted, and Cheryl Leonard redacted. And the recommendation is that council receive this public budget correspondence report dated March 25th, 2025 for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Jane and second Ron. Any discussion on that recommendation? Eric?
Just general thank you to all those that took the time to write in and provide that correspondence and reach out to council with feedback.
Thanks, Eric. Anyone else? All in favor? That's carried. Next, Manager of Parks and Recreation and Facilities regarding the Parks and Recreation garage update. And the recommendation is that council receive this Parks and Recreation garage update report dated March 25th, 2025. That council direct staff to proceed with an independent review by a professional engineer of the Parks and Recreation garage located at 14 Burstall Street. That council direct staff to replace the existing roof of the garage with similarly designed flat roof, specifically a 4-ply built-up membrane if the engineer's review supports roof replacement. That council reallocate the $50,000 from reserves in the Parks and Recreation budget currently allocated for demolition and the $50,000 from reserves in the arena budget currently allocated for a new one-bay garage to complete this work. And that council reallocate the $25,000 from taxation in the arena budget currently allocated for a new one-bay garage to the Parks and Recreation capital budget to support this work. And further, that council directs staff to move ahead with demolition of the garage if the engineer's review does not support roof replacement. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ron, and second Eric. Any discussion? Mike?
I'd just like to thank Jeff for a great report. He had lots of options included in there and, excuse me, he did a lot of research on it and brought forward a lot of good ideas. And I think what he came down with finally is the best option that we have going forward at this time. Just want to thank him and whoever helped him. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Eric?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. Thank you to Jeff. I got a chance to tour the building. I appreciate that he took the time to do some work and strip some of the paneling off to expose the beams in the interior of the building so that we can get a better look at it, and that helps council have more information to make a better decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Jane?
I just need clarification. On the first comment that the council directs staff to proceed with an independent review by professional engineer. Is that another review, or are we referring back to a review that was already done? Because it seems this building's been reviewed a few times.
This is a new review to ensure that the proposed roof, the existing facility will withstand the new roof installation.
Okay, so this is just to review the roof, not to go over the whole building again?
It's to do a general independent review and general oversee of what needs to happen in the scope of work to ensure we are doing our due diligence to make sure we're not opening up more than we can handle.
Anyone else? Ron?
Yeah, my question's for Jeff. So you did take some panels down and get a look at it, Jeff?
Yes, we've removed any covers over any of the existing beams, and under the engineer's recommendation, we've exposed roughly 30% of the covers so that we can do a good general review of what we need to do in the scope of work, and especially close to the roof drain and anywhere where we have had previous water damage, we made sure we could expose what we could there to provide the best general idea of what we are opening up and what the conditions will be.
Oh, good luck.
Good. I would say that upon initial assessment, the beams and wood trusses, the beams appear to be in good condition, and any rot is centralized to the roof drain area.
What we found.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ron?
Just a question or clarification on the last part of the engineer. At that point, we'll be meeting again and reviewing the report, I suspect, if whatever the engineer's report is. They just won't go automatically and tear it down. We'll have more correspondence for the engineer's report, correct?
John, did you want to respond to that?
Sure, through your chair to Councillor Derry. The intention here is that if the engineer's report, this is sort of the go, no go, if for whatever reason that engineering report indicates that you cannot support a roof, whether it's a flat roof or a truss roof or any other thing like that, then the idea would be through this approval to go straight to demolition. And because the money's been put away in reserves, not only for the demolition, but also to rehabilitate the site, the indication would be that, again, if that engineer's report doesn't support it, we would go straight to that. There's no intention to come back to council other than maybe an update to say, here's the report, this is going forward, but this would be approval to proceed with the recommendation as laid out in the staff report.
So we're not gonna get another chance to review the engineer's report or anything like that before they tear it down. Is that what you're saying?
Through your chair to Councillor Derry, the idea is that the engineer report would support that the solution and the recommendation the council has just indicated that that you are in support of. We would proceed with that going forward. We may provide that as an information, but the intention that we bring back for approval, that's what's in the report right now.
Good, thanks.
Do you have, sorry, if there are concerns with that or any other questions, we can maybe answer those now if you have some.
I'd just like to have more information before it's tore down, I guess is where I'm going with this. I've seen lots of engineers report in my day and sometimes they're not exactly right. So I just would like the next step before it's tore down, we may meet again and say, okay, at least we know what's happening.
So through your chair to Councillor Derry, if that's what you wish to do, then I think that would be the intention here from a staff report. Apologize for lengthening this out is Jeff has done a great job as staff
Yep.
has in terms of getting the costing.
Yep.
What we don't know are some of the costs that will cost for all the other rehabilitation, electrical, concrete, bay doors. There's significant issues with that. The engineer will just give an idea of whether a roof or a no roof would be able to go. If that's the case, this is something that we were brought forward at the end of last year in terms of looking at that. I think the intention is for this, that report would say whether we can put a roof or not, and if not, go the other way. If it is council's intention that you want to sort of create another step, the intention here is to proceed with that solution. But if you, again, the more information, the better. So if council wants an update, we can certainly provide that as an information, but this would be, from our standpoint, from staff, the idea of the way forward as implementing that and through the budget.
Eric, did you want to?
Well, just to Ron's point, we could vote this down or remove the last part of this motion. Which says, and further that council directs staff to move ahead with the demolition of the garage if the engineer's review does not support roof replacement. We could remove that out of the motion. As I hear your concern, there will be additional information coming forward related to the other fixtures, and maybe not specifically, but to have a better idea of what our overall cost is going to be long term. Putting the roof on is one fix, but there's also a lot of interior remediation work that needs to be done to get a full grasp of what we're gonna be investing into this.
So
If this is to
Does,
go ahead.
do one of you want to make an amendment to this to remove that last clause? You want to make that amendment?
Yeah, so I'll make the amendment to remove the last clause from the recommendation.
Okay, are you seconding that, Mike?
No, I would like to just say that Jeff will bring back a report on demolition if that's where it goes to. I don't think we need to
But we're
remove it.
just doing the amendment here. We need a seconder for the amendment. Ron? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I would rather we just say that Jeff will bring a report back on demolition at that point in time, if that's what it gets to, instead of removing the clause entirely. Because it just sort of leaves it up in the air. There's no path forward, if you want to speak that way, I guess. Just a little tweak to yours, Eric.
Are you okay with that, Eric?
Well, the recommendation clearly states that council directs staff to move ahead with the demolition. So it's my opinion that that whole sentence should come out.
Go ahead.
We need more than a report. We have to remove that direction.
Okay, Kristen has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I recommend to sort of please everyone, hopefully, that we would amend the final clause to remove the words to move ahead with demolition of the garage and add the words and further that council directs staff to provide a staff report to council if the engineer's review does not support roof replacement.
You okay with that, Eric and Ron? Okay. You okay with that, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the amendment then, okay? So we're just voting on the amendment at this point. So all in favor of the amendment? That's carried. So next we need a motion to approve the recommendation as amended. So can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Oh, we've got as amended though? We don't need a new one for, okay. Okay, so I'll just call the vote then on the recommendation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, if you want more discussion, sure.
So, okay, so with the wording of this last paragraph, are we not a dog chasing its tail? It sounds like we're basically going to be going back to a review with a report and then again discussing do we or don't we? It's a bit confusing, I think.
Anybody else? Maybe, Kristen, could you just read that last amendment, please, just so everybody's clear?
And further that council directs staff to provide a report to council if the engineer's review does not support roof replacement.
Okay, everybody clear on that then? So I'll call to a vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Good report. Next is the Booster Park report. And that's that council received the Booster Park report dated March 25th, 2025 for information. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Eric and Jane. Any discussion on the Booster Park report? Eric?
I guess it's disappointing to have this information come forward. I think we need to look at cost recovery here. Council is well aware that site fees are too low. I appreciate there's a recommendation for an increase in here. I'd like to put a motion on the floor that that proposed increase of 15% be increased to 20%.
Okay, first of all, we have to vote on this recommendation and then you can add another one, Eric, okay? So the recommendation that's on the floor is to receive the report for information. So all in favor? That's carried. So go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that the 2025 site fees be increased 20% from 2024 rates.
Any comments on that? Jane?
I support, Eric's motion, and I think what the
Okay. Ron? Go ahead, Jane.
I'm not making, I'm just commenting. I support Eric's motion. And the reasoning for that is the public needs to understand that, Booster Park, though it is a municipal park, it's something that we want less and less taxpayer involvement to keep the park supported. And, I think it's, I think it's because we're trying to cover the municipal costs and there's other costs coming up. I think it's a wise move.
Eric?
I'd just like to speak to some of my reasoning here. I think ultimately the seasonal residents are guests in our municipality. It's the residents and taxpayers here, though, that bear the financial risk for the whole property in terms of operation and anything that happens there. Residents' property tax are going up. It's only fair to me that the seasonal residents should see that as well. Many other parks actually pass on property tax increases where those fees are added additionally on top of park fees. So they'll have their basic park fees plus an allocation of the assessment of the property passed on. We don't pass anything on. Even with the rates right now, comparison for 2025 versus other seasonal parks on Crow Lake, we're about $1,000 less than the average on the park. So that park is extremely aggressively priced right now versus comparison. So even with an increase, it's still quite a bit less than anywhere else on the lake. These seasonal residents, they do use our roads. They use our water and infrastructure systems in the park. They use our docks, which our taxpayers are paying for. And a reminder, 2019 to 2024, $141,000 were raised through residents' property tax owners here. And there is nothing in the Booster Park Reserve. So if something happens, that all falls back to residents.
Thanks, Eric. Mike?
I agree with Eric. We need an increase because we're way, way below everybody else. But I'm not sure if we need to do, I agree maybe 20%, but I also like to see something put in there that this will be reviewed on an annual or a biannual basis going forward. I would hate to have people think that we're going to raise it 20% and it's going to stay like that, because going forward, I don't think so. I'd like to see something put in. Yeah, we'll raise them 20% this year, and the rates will be reviewed on an annual basis going forward to stay competitive.
Thanks, Mike. Jane, you had your hand up. And then Eric.
I wanted to question Councillor on his on the part about property taxes. I like that idea. How would you see that working? An annual amount divided by the square footage of each unit?
Yeah, I just mentioned that for a point of reference. Other parks do that and pass that cost on. Our seasonal residents here don't have that fee applied. So depending on what the property size is or what, I'm not sure how exactly different parks calculate that, but that cost is passed on, and that's in the hundreds of dollars. That's not $50 or $60. That can be upwards. Some parks on the lake, seasonal residents paying almost $1,000 toward the impact assessment.
Thanks, Eric.
So, and if I just, while I have the mic, sorry, just to respond to Mike's point, we do pass user fees for Booster Park annually as part of the user fee bylaw, as you're aware. However, 2020, 2021, 2022, there were no increases. The fees stayed fixed at 1838 and 1920. So it was only recently, starting in 2023, that we started to look at a very slow and gradual increase of fees.
Thanks, Eric. And I think that was together with a change in management we started looking at the fees because the arrangement or the agreement is different than it was. I think the previous manager was there for like 30 years. And so it was after he retired that we started looking at the arrangement there, the agreement there. So what I'm hearing is you're recommending a 20% increase this year and then maybe looking at the funding model for future years. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, my motion currently, we can look at that when we review those fees going into next year, but for the 2025 season, an increase of 20% over 2024 rates.
Jane?
So based on your last comment, if I was to make a motion that we look at the pro rating of the property taxes for the individual units of the park at this meeting, would that be preemptive and better done at the meeting where we review costs? Okay.
Hang on, we've got one.
Yeah, I know.
Clause.
Okay, so I'll make a motion now.
Yeah, so can we get that motion? Can you read it to us, Kristen, what Eric moved?
That council directs staff to increase the 2025 Booster Park site fees 20% from the 2024 rates in the 2025 user fee bylaw.
Okay, and we have a seconder. So all in favor on that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Jane?
I would like to make a motion that staff provide a report of the individual tax compensation per site based on a 12-month period. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand. You mean for next year? Okay, for 2026.
So we have a bit of a heads up going into it.
Okay. So that's a motion. Can I get a seconder, Ron? Any discussion on that motion, Ron?
Just clarification, if I may. So you want to do a report on how the taxation would apply to each lot again?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
I agree. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Mike?
I'm just curious. I don't think MPAC assesses every lot in that place. It wouldn't be assessed at all. So the only way we could do is if we have, say, a 10% tax increase across the board, we increase the rates in the park by 10%. It's got to be something simple. We can't have the guys out there measuring every lot. I think that would be way too much work and way too complicated. And we don't know what the value of these things are. And it's not up to us. We're not supplying the units on those lots. All we're supplying is the lot. So it's up to the person as to how luxurious or how much money they put into their vacation home there. I just think it should just be if when we do the user fee bylaw, if taxes went up 10%, then those things should go up 10% because as Eric said, they're using all the same facilities in town that other people are using. Therefore, the rate should just be easy peasy to set up. I don't want anything complicated.
John?
So through you, Chair, with the councilor's indulgence, right now we're tax exempt. So because it's municipally owned property, we're not paying tax on that. Perhaps the treasurer can provide a little bit more insight on that.
Go ahead, Nancy.
That's correct. It is tax exempt property because it's municipally owned. There is an assessment on it and you can apply the tax rate to that assessment. But yeah, currently it's tax exempt. So that's not one of the expenses we have for the park. The main expense that the park has on taxpayers is the capital work because there's not enough revenue to support any capital work that goes on there. And of course, we have the washrooms, the outstanding unfinanced capital that we need to pay.
Okay, then that being said, it's probably best that I withdraw my motion as there are no property taxes to distribute.
If I might, Chair, through you, Councillor Lakatos, if you're looking for, as part of the regular annual process with respect to looking at user fee bylaw, if you're looking because now the change in terms of stewardship is over to Jeff in terms of from Parks Recreation Facilities, perhaps we can look at opportunities and bring forward the next proposal that we would look at any kind of funding issues or any idea of being able to look at how other calculations could be considered in that, because overall the report was trying to identify that there's an underfunded and there's a liability issue. We're looking to try and make this more profitable as we would keep that business. That said, probably too much right now. Perhaps if I may, you're trying to look at if there are any other possibilities, avenues, opportunities next year as part of the user fee bylaw review to bring those forward in that context.
Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking if there's some way we can do a percentage or an add-on of capital cost improvement to just a standard 1%, 2% or something like that. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm withdrawing my motion.
I can't hear you, Jan.
My microphone went off. Did you have further comments?
Yeah, I think it's irrelevant whether that we're charging taxes on that piece of property or not. If the cost to the municipality went up by 10% this year, that should just be spread across the board. All we're using it for is an indicator as to how much we should put up the thing. And I want to give the people that are a heads up that these things are going to be coming down the pipe. I don't want them to say, oh, I can afford it this year and scrape through together and do some work on their place. And then next year we come back and say, we're going to raise the rates there. And they go, oh, well, you didn't tell us that. I just want there as an indicator that they're aware that these rates are going to be reviewed annually and that they're going to go up. And also I was basically using the tax rate for was just an indicator of how much we should raise them, because if it costs us 10% more to run the municipality, then that should be the share that they pay, or some indicator like that. Whether we pay taxes or collect taxes on that property, it is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, do you want to make a further motion, or were you willing to just accept this? Like we've already passed the motion to increase rates 20%. Jane withdrew her motion. Is there anything further?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Next is the additional asset management funding. And the recommendation is that council receive this additional asset management funding and planning progress report dated March 25th, 2025 for information. And further, that council reallocate the $40,000 currently allocated in the administration capital budget for a strategic plan to the asset management budget, reducing it to $25,000, thus reducing the 2025 draft budget by $15,000. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Jane and Eric, any discussion on that report? Eric?
Through the chair, whoever on staff would like to respond, I'd like to know how we ended up in this situation. How did this sneak up without knowledge?
John?
So through your chair to Councillor Dow, what I can do is provide that as we've been going through the asset management plan and that process, one of the more recent things, and I'll have the department manager speak to that, Victor, looking at how we've been tracking towards meeting the regulation obligations, like in terms of the deadlines, we've been able to do that. That said, I think this last piece of work, the level of service, doing that at 10-year level is a lot more work than what perhaps originally thought to be, but I'll let Victor answer that.
And to that, how long have we known that that was an obligation by July 1st?
July. Through the chair, the July 1st obligation's been there since the start of this regulation's been passed. As John said in the report there, we've met every deadline moving forward, and we're working diligently to do this July 1st in-house. But after a recent webinar and workshop that I attended, I realized that it was not going to be attainable in-house, and that's why we're looking at an outside source that has done the original asset management plan.
Okay, anyone else? All in favor? That's carried. Next is, the report by the treasurer regarding the 2025 draft budget recommendations, and this is the 2025 final draft budget. The recommendation is that council receive the 2025 draft budget and recommendations report dated March 25th, 2025, and further that the draft budget be put on the floor for discussion. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Jane, second. Ron? So for comments, it was Nancy going to speak to this? Go ahead, Nancy.
So in my report, I've made some recommendations through the reports that the other staff members have done. The administration one with the removal of the strategic plan in addition has already been addressed. The medical center, we have some estimates that have come in lower than we had projected. So there's a little bit of savings there that council can make a motion to reduce that capital cost. And then through the Parks and Rec, we've addressed that as well already. My other recommendation was just it's something council will need to decide if they want to add more to reserves. We have bridges that are coming up on an $8 million within the next 5 years. So we need some money to do some bridge work, and we will need to replace the Zamboni at some time. So I don't know if council wants to think about putting money towards the purchase of a Zamboni. And then I'm not sure council has gone through the budget and has ideas of their own, but we can go through it department by department and have a discussion there of how you want to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I think what each department was going to speak to their portion of the budget, or do you want to go around the table for council?
So if I may, Chair, I think the best way we have the report in terms of the recommendations that are here from the treasurer. I think to deal with that first and foremost in terms of those additions, and then perhaps as a way to approach is going department to department as council, if they have any questions, any comments, anything that needs to be done, wouldn't be so much that the department head would be there to lead that conversation, but answer any questions. And then council, in the organic way of making that decision, look at what questions there are and then make a decision based on that. And as we go along, the treasurer will certainly look at the over and under, if I may, of what that will mean in terms of the overall tax or budget increase.
So what you're saying is the recommendations that are the points that Nancy just made, we'll just leave those on the floor and then go around for discussion? Or do you want to make a decision on those points before we go through the budget document?
I think the intention would be to have a discussion on those.
Okay,
Yeah.
But they all need a motion for action, right?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we did have a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor, so I can open it up to questions. Anybody have questions for Nancy on her comments? Jane?
Nancy, on the medical center, the 6,500 is has been removed due to a lesser cost. Does that 6,500 was it already allocated, or is it sitting in reserves?
There was some that was coming from reserves from last year, but that was enough to cover one furnace. And we need two because there's just 2 apartments there. So we had allocated what we were thinking the furnaces would come in at. The estimates come in at a little bit lower, so we're able to lower that cost a bit.
So what happens to the 6,500? Where is it going?
The 6,500 you can remove it from the budget, so that'll decrease the tax levy.
Okay.
Eric?
Sorry, just to clarify, so that action needs a motion then,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So can I put that motion forward, or have we received this? Okay, so
We can do them individually, or we can make a motion at the end, I suppose, or do you want to do them individually, Kristen? Okay, so, do you want to make that motion, Eric?
yeah, so I'll make.
Oh, sorry, I think we need a motion, yeah, sorry. Yes, so all in favor? That's carried. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I'll make a motion to reduce the medical center capital capital by $6,500 based on this recommendation
Can I
of
get a
reduced furnace
seconder for
costs.
that, Jane? Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Anyone else? Next point? What was the next one, Nancy? Can you-
The next one was one that you've already made a decision on. It's the strategic plan and asset management. And that's already been decided.
Right,
I have a running tally going with the removal of the strat plan of 40,000, addition of asset management of 2,500, a removal of the adjustment for the furnace of 6,500, which has the tax rate increased currently at 8.98%.
so we've already made the decision on that. So what's the next one, Nancy? Just a minute, Eric.
So the Parks and Rec one was the next one that was recommended, and you guys have already decided on that one too. So I would say that the transportation of whether or not you want to put more money into reserves for bridges.
Okay, any comments, Eric?
Sorry, I'd just like to go back to the admin. That removal of the strat plan, although yes, we did just vote on that and it was a council decision. There wasn't much choice there. The asset management is an obligation, so that was kind of a forced move to remove the strat plan unless we wanted to add additional taxation to cover that.
Thank you. So the next one is to do with, do we want to make any kind of a motion to put money into reserves for bridges? Roads and bridges, I think you said, Nancy.
I'm recommending bridges at this time.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Eric?
So the schedule right now has 100,000 allocated. This is an additional 100 on top of what's in there, correct?
Correct.
Jane, did you have a
No,
question? thought
I
saw
support the
something.
100,000.
Mike?
Just a comment, we're not putting enough into reserves right now for the transportation department. I think we have 1.3 million total in reserves, close to last year's ending. I think we're pulling some of that out for this year's work. We've got $8 million worth of bridges coming forward in 5 years, I do believe, as Nancy pointed out. And if we've only got $1 million in there and we have to fund all purchases and roads and everything in transportation, we're way below what we're going to need. Even if we did get a grant, we probably have to come up with 30%. So 30% on 8 million is 2.4 million. And we're not even close to that right at the moment. So I would be in favor of putting money in there because, as we all mentioned before, all we're doing is pushing it off to next year. Well, next year is finally coming. So I would rather we increase taxes a little bit each year over and above what we really need to put money into reserves. If we don't, we're going to have a tax increase of 20% or 22% one year just to cover a bridge that's going to collapse. So I would rather put the 100,000 in now.
Do you want to make a motion, Mike?
I make a motion that we put 100,000 into the bridge reserve at this point in time.
Can I get a seconder? Jane? Comments or questions? Ron?
I agree with what Mike has just said, but what I want to know from Nancy is where does that put us on our increase?
That would bring you up to 10.05, sorry.
Any further comments? Being none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Anything further, Nancy? Is that everything?
There's one more recommendation, and that has to do with the Zamboni or the ice resurfacer, whether or not council wants to consider putting reserves in for that replacement.
Comments? Or first of all, if we need a motion, if you want to consider it, put it on the floor. Ron?
I don't have a motion. I have a question before I make a motion. And it's to Jeff.
Yep.
You give us a rough idea what your Zamboni is like today.
Currently, we've just had repairs completed on our Zamboni. The reality though is that it's beyond its useful life cycle. And to continue to utilize it is to open the door to unscheduled shutdowns and unexpected repair costs. Once it's beyond its useful life cycle, we cannot completely rely upon outdated equipment. So it's forward thinking to consider contributing to this so that when we do experience failure, we are able to address it.
Okay, before we go any further, though, we need a motion on the floor before we debate it any further. So do you want to put the motion on, Ron, to talk about it?
Talk about it?
To talk
Absolutely.
about it?
Sure.
Okay,
Make that motion.
second, Jane? Okay, go ahead.
So
To consider money going into reserves for the Zamboni.
That I would need an amendment.
I just want to talk about it. I don't want
So-
to put money away.
So if I may, Chair, I think the idea would be a recommendation as laid out in the report, which would be the idea of additional 25,000 for in reserves for the ice
Oh,
surface.
right,
Ice
yeah, I
reserve
see
reserve.
that now.
And
Yeah,
then with the
sorry.
mover and seconder, then there'll be discussion as to where the council takes that decision or discussion.
So you okay with that, Ron?
No.
Okay, so is anybody prepared to put a motion on the floor to deal with the reserves for the Zamboni?
It's just a motion. We're not passing it.
No, it's just somebody needs to move it and second it.
I'll second it.
But what are the terms, putting it on for $25,000?
Well, just as it is here, and my understanding is we can amend the amount during the discussion, can we not? Yes.
Okay, so what's that?
Second it.
I don't have.
There was no mover.
Oh,
so-
well.
Yeah, she's moving it,
So she's moving it?
I'm moving it as it's presented.
Right.
and then we need a seconder.
Oh,
Mike is seconding
okay.
that, so, okay. Questions or comments, Jane?
It's a two-pronged question. Number one, what does a new Zamboni cost? And number two, is there such thing as buying a good used Zamboni?
I've gotten quotes on a new Zamboni ice resurfacer in and around approximately $135,000. The quote we've put within the paperwork is considerate of inflation, and if we choose to not do so this year, prices are only going up on these services. But and then as far as a used ice resurfacer, each one comes with its flaws and comes with its vehicle history that we are unknowns until we purchase it. I know from my previous experience that you could have a used ice resurfacer that the augers are beginning to not keep up with the load. And in your last pass of your flood, you're dumping snow in the corners.
Okay.
So I would rather commit to reserves than to open the idea of purchasing a used ice resurfacer because it just comes with too many unknowns.
Go ahead, Jane.
Is our arena gonna open next year?
Yes, our arena is going to open next year. For sure. Yes.
This year? Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, okay, next ice season this year. Okay, okay.
Opening day, September 6th. Fingers crossed.
It's public now, you know.
Looking forward to it.
Mike?
Just a question for Jeff and Nancy. I think right at the moment, we have about 96,000 reserves for facilities, which would be the whole package that Jeff takes care of. Just a quick question. I know that there is a lawnmower on that we need for Parks and Rec coming up. And I'm just wondering, Jeff, is there any other thing that we need to address that we have money in reserves for? And I do believe, right now we have, like I say, 96,000 in reserves there, but I'm not sure if 35,000 this year is coming out or not. Nancy, can you just give me a better idea of what we have there and what's going on? And Jeff, if you could let us know, what else do you need that you foresee in the next year or two other than the Zamboni?
Nancy, you're
So yeah, there's 35,000 in the budget to go into facility reserve. So there is money there in facilities that can be used. But it's not particularly for the arena. I don't think the arena, like,
No, it's just facilities, I do believe, Nancy.
Yeah.
Which
that's
is all three, Parks, Rec, and the arena.
yeah, well, the Parks and Rec has its own as well. There's a small amount in Parks and Rec. I mean, I think the facilities should be designated for buildings. Not necessarily a Zamboni per se.
okay.
Arena has its own reserve.
Yeah, arena has a little bit. It's less than 15,000 in the arena reserve right now.
So 15,000, if we want to break it all down, I think the money that goes there should be facilities, whatever you want to call it, Parks, Rec facilities, that whole area that Jeff takes care of. So what else do we need going forward in the next year or so that we need $96,000 for? And we're putting 35,000 in this year. So that would give us about 120. Now, those aren't audited reserves yet, so we're not 100% sure on that. But Jeff, what else do you foresee going forward? I know, Nancy, we've fallen way behind on facilities. So we do need a bunch of money there. What else do we need?
Mike, I think this is just dealing with the Zamboni.
I know it's dealing with the Zamboni. What I'm saying is that whole department has only got 96,000 to do facilities, the Zamboni, the arena, everything. So what else does Jeff
But
need?
Mike, we
going
have to,
forward?
we have to just deal with the Zamboni on this particular motion. I think I know where you're going. You're trying to look to see what other commitments we're going to have to make as far as Jeff's department is concerned for equipment and so forth. But this is just to deal with the Zamboni and the reserves. So
I know, but with your indulgence.
we have a motion on the floor, Mike. Let's just deal with that. And then if you want to bring something else forward, that's fine. We'll deal with that under Jeff's department.
Okay, well, I'm not prepared to vote piecemeal, so I'll abstain.
So on the Zamboni, we have a motion on the floor to put money in reserves, right? And we have a seconder. So any further discussion on the Zamboni reserves? Go ahead, Ron.
Two questions, one's to Nancy, one's to Jeff. How much did you spend? You said you did some repairs on it, Jeff. How much did you spend on it?
If Nancy could speak to that, if the repair cost, I believe 10,000.
There was money in the 2024 budget as well for repairs. Just take me a second to pull that information up.
It's not that important. I just wondered in terms of where we are with the Zamboni, is that, every year going to take a lot of money to keep it going, or I'm just trying to get it in my head. And the other question with Nancy was, if we do this, what does that do to the tax rate?
I can speak on that. The conditioner was rebuilt, but that goes back to the discussion of any piece of equipment that's beyond its useful life cycle. There's so many unknowns that can we really forecast what additional work will need to be done? As of this year, it has been fully inspected and gone over by Zamboni, and it should be fully operable, but I cannot forecast what the future of that piece of equipment is, given that its life cycle and that its vulnerability to wear and tear over the years.
Eric?
Question through the chair to Jeff. That resale on that piece of equipment then in a year from now or 2 years, whenever it's due for replacement, would that basically have zero value?
It would for sure have some form of value for resale.
But minimal?
I would still, if I had to put a number on it, there are so many arenas in the US that are privately run. Plenty of them have have a use for that piece of equipment. I think there is a market for it. It's just in the municipal sector, we should be able to rely upon the equipment that we use.
And in your 2025 contracted services or material and supplies for the arena, do you know approximately in the breakdown of that, what you've allocated to Zamboni, like maintenance and repairs, roughly?
I believe in our arena capital, just as a buffer, we have 8,500 in Zamboni repair, just because due to the age of it and trying to make sure that we don't have any unexpected costs landing on my operational budget.
Thank you. And if there was equipment failure, is there rental Zambonis available if there was a situation where it was totally unusable?
Yes, for sure.
Thanks. Anything further on the Zamboni? Go ahead, Nancy, you were.
I was just going to clarify that in 2024, $15,000 was in the capital budget for the Zamboni repairs. Only half of that was used. So what's in the 2025 budget is $8,500, as Jeff had said, but it's coming from reserves. So it's not a tax implication at this point.
Jane?
What would it cost to rent a Zamboni for a season? Maybe we're better to rent rather than purchase.
That would be something I need to look into, but at this current time, our current Zamboni has been fully repaired and is at this time operational, and there would be no reason to look into renting at this moment.
But it could be a future consideration.
If it came to that, I can price that out and have an idea of if push came to shove and our machine was inoperable, we wouldn't have any choice but to look into that avenue.
Thank you. John, did you want to
So
comment?
through the chair, I think one of the other questions that left to be answered, that should council approve this one line item, that would bring the tax rate to 10.32%.
So I think what I'm hearing is that we're pretty confident that our Zamboni will operate this next season with the repairs and so forth. And I understand that you can't predict the unpredictable. The motion that's on the floor is to put money into reserves for future, probably future capital purchase, not necessarily repairs, because we've already put that in or got that in the budget, right? 8,500, did I hear? So that's the decision that we're making is, do we want to put money into the reserves for future purchase of a future need for a Zamboni? Because we already have money in operating budget, I believe, to if repairs come up or it needs servicing. So that's how I understand it. Is everybody on that page? One more question, Jane?
I'm going back to the rental thing because that's burning a hole in my brain here. Nancy, if 25,000 was set in reserves and something happened to our Zamboni and we couldn't use it and we decided rather than to purchase a Zamboni, it would be better just to rent one on an annual basis. Could that 25,000 be moved out of capital reserves and move into operating?
Yes. What would typically happen is Jeff would have to do a report to council saying this is what's happened. We need to access the reserves, and council makes that decision on what they want to do with the reserves. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've kind of, go ahead, Mike. Any more?
I agree with your explanation, Jan, but if we don't put any kind of money in reserves going forward for the Zamboni. As Jeff said, we're looking at $130,000 hit all in 1 year if the thing decides to croak going down the line. And we got $8,500 in there that we can move from repairs into it. So that takes it down to $111,000 roughly that we have to come up with, which would be about 3% or 2.5% increase on the budget with the one hit. So I'd much rather put $25,000 in at this point in time. It's just my comment.
Okay, anybody else? So if there's no further comments, all in favor of the motion? That's failed. So anything else, Nancy, that you had on your list?
That was all my recommendations at this time. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, do we need, just now we're moving on to approval of the 2025 proposed budget? Have we got all the motions we need for the last, item? Go ahead, Kristen.
So that next motion or recommendation on the agenda is when it's all said and done. So the first motion made in association with Nancy's report put the budget as a whole on the table for discussion. So I think traditionally now we would turn to each department's budget and go through those one at a time to see if any of the counselors want to make a motion to add or remove anything.
Okay.
So that's
do we
page
need a motion?
44 of your agenda package.
Do we need a motion to do that?
No, we've already had it.
We've already done
Yep.
that? Okay. So, the first, department. Nancy, is there a particular order that you want to go through this?
I would just follow the order of the budget. So council is the first department. If you're going through the operational, and then we can go through all the operational budgets if there's any questions or any motions from council. And then after that, we can go through all of the capital.
Okay, so start with the council and governance, I guess page 13. Well, is it helpful if we go by page as well?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the service for council governance. Any comments, questions regarding that department?
I would just like it so the public understands that this money is for the counselors only and for the administrative support of the counselors. It has nothing to do with staff. Correct? You're correct.
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments on that, Eric?
Can I make a motion
Do we need a motion for each department or?
to make an
Okay,
adjustment change here?
sure, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce contracted services from $15,400 to $12,000 in the council governance budget.
Can I ask what is included in those contracted services, Nancy?
Yes, there's legal, and conferences and training. And there's a small, budget for a little bit of advertising.
Okay, so we have a mover for that. Can I get a seconder for that motion? Jane? Any further discussion on that, Jane?
Nancy, under contracted services and in prior years, have we used every penny?
In legal?
No,
there-
and just to into the total amount of contracted services.
No, you haven't used all of it, no.
Mike, did you have your hand up?
Just curious where it come up with this $3,000. What's he cutting out?
Well, I just looked at our year-to-date actuals for last year and then going back previous years and having a discussion with Nancy related to the breakdown specifically of the items in contracted service, and I don't think that line needs that kind of padding in it to get to 15.4. I think 12,000 is more realistic to the needs.
Thank you.
Cutting off on me.
Sorry.
Anyway, anything further on that, on page 13 of the Service Department and Council Governance? Okay, thank you. Next is administration. Comments? Anybody? Comments or Eric?
I'd like to make a motion to remove the communications officer from the administration budget.
Can I get a seconder for that? Ron? Any discussion? Eric?
This is a really hard one. I really think this is something that you really need. Personally, I've been an ambassador and advocate for this position being created. I think there's some motivation from the public to have this, but this is another really tough budget. I think at this point, that position hasn't been defined enough as to what the responsibilities would be specifically. I'd like to see that become a role in the municipality in the future, but I'd personally like to see a better plan and expectations for what the responsibilities of that position would entail.
Any further comments, Jane?
Currently, how are communications being addressed? She says with a straight face.
So through you, Chair, to Councilor Lakatos, communications is a part of a number of people's jobs, certainly in within transportation, within parks, and also within the administration. A lot of that falls on the clerk. I think the intention there is that we would need to be more coordinated or be able to consolidate the communications in a much better way than that has happened. The intention here for that role was to do communications, also look at more with the change in the administration for fire and emergency in terms of the retirement of the fire chief, was to take the CEMC, which is the Community Emergency Management Coordinator role, make that part of communications, and also looking at enhancing that with any opportunities for grant applications from a coordination standpoint. I think, again, staff, we all do our job plus a little bit more. The intention there was to take part of that communications, other roles. The point made by Councillor Dow is well considered in the sense that, again, how that role will work needs to be, if it isn't clear, it certainly has to be more thought out. And again, it's a tough budget, but the intention there, communications is a part of everyone's role. The intention was to have this chief responsibility in this one role. If council chooses not to support that, then what we would do is still try and get those benefits with the idea of still working with the parts of other people's roles. I hope I answered that.
Yes. So in a nutshell, are we asking to overburden current staff and their roles?
If through your chair to Councillor Lakatos, I wouldn't call it a burden. I think what I would say is that with the change and reorganization, certainly that the organization has experienced in the last little while, the intention is to sort of help current staff focus on their core responsibilities. Communication is an important thing, not only internally, but externally. I think one of the things that I had looked at in proposing this was the idea of even creating a page, an opportunity to repatriate and sort of coordinate all our communications centrally. On top of that, create a page that would allow us to have those consultations, public engagement in one particular platform. And that would be something looking at whomever the successful candidate would be able to do that. And even as I had talked about before, that even though we had to sort of get rid of the strategic plan, council's being very clear that they want that. That would also be with the right candidate, part of their responsibility.
Eric?
Yeah, I just think we really need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. John's been tasked with the big challenge. There's a lot of changes happening within the municipality in terms of management and staff. but we need to take a look back and really look at the organizational structure. Currently, there are several positions within the municipality that very clearly have communications as part of their job description. I understand this is more than just communications, and that it would be more than exactly what's laid out in those roles, but some of the responsibilities of that position already lie with other staff. So we may need to look at structure from that perspective.
Mike, you with your hand up, go ahead.
Yep, I agree with Eric. I think, I hate to see this position go because I think we direly need it. We don't get near enough information out there to the public. We should be congratulating the roads department and the parks department and everybody on every achievement that they do, and we don't do that very well. I know the roads department, I believe it's Celeste out there, she posts things regarding the roads department, which is great to let people know and keep that up to date. But I think this is a discussion we need to hold in private, because I'm not sure if we change people's jobs descriptions, then there's other consequences when we do that, it seems to be. So, but there is an opportunity. Economic development, I don't know what we could shunt through that, because a lot of this stuff has
If I may,
lots to do with economic development.
Mike,
Yeah.
John wishes to speak, I think, to your comments.
sorry, through you, Chair, to the deputy, and again, with the, don't wanting to really stop some of the conversations, but if we start to get to a point where we're looking to matters of identifying individuals, things that be more apt or more appropriately dealt with in closed, that's kind of where I'm feeling
Yes.
this may go. So that said, I don't want to disrespect what, or in any way diminish what the deputy is providing. I think the intent and the direction, if council chooses, is to look at the existing organizational structure with the idea of how communications is certainly now, and then coming back with anything that might help enhance that, promote that, leverage what we have, and then come back to the council in a separate form.
I agree, this is a sensitive area. I know we're talking about a communications position, but we have to be careful that we don't, get too deep into the weeds on this, because developing this job description would be an administrative role. And so I think we need to, Ron, did you haven't commented? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's just a comment. I agree. We need this role. We're just not there yet. So I'm in favor of it, but I don't like Eric. There's not the time.
Jane?
Nancy, with this exclusion, what are we saving?
I can get the exact number.
Ballpark it.
So we're about 8.94%. I'm guessing because the spreadsheet that has that information on it has everybody's salary. So I don't want to pull that up at this moment. When we break, I'll get you an exact number. So I'm guessing around 100,000 with benefits and everything, which would bring you down to 8.94, but I'll get a more exact number for you at break.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? So, I think the motion is to exclude this position at this time from the budget, generally speaking. So I think we've all had a chance to comment. So all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So next we'll move on to the fire and emergency services. Comments, first of all, I guess, comments, or anybody want to make a motion on anything that's on this part of the budget? Jane?
I don't know if this needs to go before or after a motion. Tony, people were asking about the purchases of PPE equipment, and I know that you've explained to me what the cycle is and what the plans are. Can you please elaborate on the purchase of PPE? What are the plans this year for purchasing PPE for the fire department?
Yeah, just so the question was to do with the way that we set three three sets of bunker gear. We'll call it PPE, personal protective equipment, which includes a bunker gear, your gloves, your full outfit that each individual firefighter wears. So approximately $10,000 per firefighter is one set of PPE or bunker gear, whatever you want to call it. So every year for the last 15 years, we've been setting basically three sets, average three per year in the capital budget for that, which is $30,000. And of course, unless we retire a firefighter or we bring on new firefighters, we don't need to buy three sets every year. But there's a 10-year lifespan on the bunker gear or the PPE. So every 10 years when that comes due, there's replacement sets that have to be purchased. So the idea of putting three away, this year we have to purchase 9 sets of bunker gear, okay, because of the annual 10-year cycle that comes up. When I first took over, we had to replace all 30 sets at one particular time with no reserves in that. So we started to stagger them a bit. So that's why every 2 or 3 years, or if we bring on 3 or 4 new people, we have to hire new bunker gear. So it doesn't get spent every year, but it goes into reserves. And then when we need to order them, the full price is used. So I hope that answered the question.
It does, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? I have a couple of questions if nobody else does at the moment. The transfer to reserves is, I see here, for this year is $83,000. Last year, the budget was 50,000 we put in. I would like to reduce that 83,000. I'm not just sure by how much, because we know Tony's going to retire. We don't know going forward what our plans are going to be for filling that position. So I would like to reduce that to $40,000. So that's my motion. Can I get a seconder? Ron? Any discussions? Jane?
I'd like to counter that and maintain the transfer at 50,000.
The motion is 40,000. Are you seconding? Ron seconded.
Through you, Chair, to really counsel. I guess what we're trying to get clarity, at least with the clerk, is it to reduce it by 40 or 240? And then 240. And then Councillor Lakatos, you're sort of suggesting that it actually be 50 as opposed to 40, but there would have to be, it'd have to be a motion put on the floor, a proper motion for 40, and then discussion, and then perhaps.
So the motion I put forward is 40,000 and Ron seconded it. So any discussion on the motion to put 40,000? All in favor?
No.
Oh, you want to speak, Mike?
Yeah, why what's the rationale to reduce it by 40? Can Tony talk and put what all is in the reserves? I know you're saying there's roughly 30,000. Is that bunker gear? The 30 part of that 83 is 30,000 for bunker gear. And what's the rest for it, Tony? Is that for trucks going forward?
Tony?
Let Nancy answer that question, Mike. She's probably got better. I can answer it, but I'll let Nancy do it. She's the money person.
Deputy Mayor, through the chair. The $50,000 goes towards replacing a fire truck. So we've always put money into equipment. And then 33,000 is from savings from leased equipment that we had leased in previous years. So we've paid that off now. So we had $33,000 extra that I was allocating to Tony's reserves.
Okay, so does the $33,000 then change going forward, as seeing as that was part of last year's budget and the increase is based on the differential between the 2 years, Nancy?
So if it's removed from this budget, then there's no more for next year. Because you've reduced the budget by the 33%. I was taking the savings and putting it into reserves. But if we're going to remove it from the reserves, then that's gone. It reduces the tax levy.
Right, okay. Okay, so the $33,000 wasn't meant for anything specific, the 50,000 was. So I would like to make a motion that we reduce it to 50,000,
Yep.
not to 40,000.
Mike,
A
the
change,
the motion on the floor is to reduce it to 40,000. So we have to vote on that first.
okay, sorry,
And
ahead
if
of
I
myself.
may, if I may, Chair, sorry to interrupt. I don't like interrupting the discussion. However, I think the idea is the 50,000 was to be transferred to reserves. The 33,000 was savings and was to go from, because it was a savings, was to add on to that reserve. If the intention of the motion on the table is for 40,000, that really would be the 33 savings plus 7, correct? And that would mean that there would be a deficit or change, a delta of 43,000 from the line item here. So the motion here, again, is for 40,000. That would include the 33,000 as savings and the 7,000, which would be on the taxpayer. The rest would not be going forward. So is that correct, Nancy?
I'm a little bit confused now. Are we reducing the total amount going into reserves to 40,000? Okay, so we're reducing the budget by 43,000. Okay, that's what I had. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the motion that's on the floor. So, all in favor? That's carried.
Okay, excuse me, sorry, I thought I had a chance to discuss this and make a counter motion to reduce it to 50.
You
All
can
of a
make a
sudden,
motion
that's
now
what's
if
carried.
you want to, but it's, the decision's been made in terms of, we voted on, the allocation and it passed. So, I think to increase it now would be, I think kind of a point of order. Am I right?
Sorry, but that was my whole point. I asked to speak to upping it to 50,000 and we said we couldn't do that at that point in time. So,
No, it would have had to have been a separate motion, I believe.
So if I may, the motion originally was for 40,000. If that were to be defeated, then that would be the case where another motion would be, or if the intention was to amend it from 40 to 50,000, that would have been the superseding amendment. But right now, as council, unless they wish to
that
revisit
was my point. I wanted to amend it.
the,
Okay, so do we need a motion to reconsider?
I would say council's already made a decision to reduce it to 40,000, reduce it by 43,000 to 40,000. And unless the mover and seconder are, or however it passed, are not comfortable that, that would make the proposal for 50,000 a moot issue.
Okay, I'm not prepared to change it. Ron, you were the seconder. We're okay with the 40,000. Okay, that's done then. The other question I had, under materials and supplies, I see new dispatch increase. Tony, what's that about? Is that some new system we have or something? No, I'm on. Under materials and supplies, it says new dispatch increase of 10,000. Can you explain what that's for?
Yeah, that's, we moved away from Belleville Dispatch, who at Belleville Fire used to dispatch us. Belleville got out of the dispatch system. So all fire departments in Hastings and Prince Edward have gone with, St. Catharines Dispatch, St. Catharines Fire Dispatch. And there is an increase in that with all contracts. So.
Okay, thank you. I think, oh, yeah, back to materials and supplies. 2024 actuals were 146, 278. The 2024 budget was 2,007, 675, and the 2025 budget is 187, 675. Can you explain the difference in that for me, please?
Number one, I'm retiring this year. So when I was doing the budget, I did decrease the budget numbers, being that, I didn't think it was fair for me to substantially increase figures and numbers without having the future fire chief involved in the budget process. So yeah, so that is basically I've taken last year we had a good year. So we were under budget. I looked at the budget, kind of trimmed things that we had over budgeted the year before. Due to circumstances, year to year it changes. So that base numbers a base budget for the fire department for this year, and moving forward, it'll be up to council to decide how they move forward in the future.
Thanks, Tony. Anything else on the fire and emergency services? All in favor? We didn't need that. Okay.
If I may, Chair, just to interrupt, perhaps as we go through and as we go department or more decision by decision, it might be good to get a refresh on what the tax rate is at this point.
Yeah, Nancy. Thank you.
8.48%.
Thank you. Next is the police OPP. I know there's really nothing we can debate, but I can tell you that we had a meeting this week with MPP Rick Brissy, and this was a topic that we brought up to him, that this is sort of one of those charges that we have no control over. We have no input. Mike sits on the police services board, and I know that this year when they brought forward their budget, it was retracted very quickly, or their levy increase, it was retracted, and then the government moved in and gave us some sort of a refund to bring the levy down. So just that's comments. We expressed our concern to MPP Brissy about our concern going forward as to how the OPP funding formula is going to work. So any questions, Eric?
Well, just for the public to be aware, going forward, should the provincial government not step in again, that would have been $100,000 increase on the levy, which is more than a point just to cover that. Within this, we're keeping 82,000 going into reserves as a protection, because next year there likely will be an increase. Will the province step in again? We don't know. So to pad that for next year.
Yeah, we're not sure. And I know other municipalities have made the same comments to MPP Brissy.
Yeah, I just, while we're on this, I hear lots of feedback from the public related to OPP service. This letter did get circulated. It came in an envelope like this. It was to random households in Marmor Lake, but it's about level of service of the OPP in our area. We pay a lot. This would have been over $1 million bill for OPP service. So if you haven't yet completed that, I'd encourage you to do so. We're paying a lot for this service. Let them know your feedback and what your expectations as a resident are.
Thank you. So I think we can move forward to the conservation authorities on page 17. And again, we don't have any control over this levy. Go ahead, Mike. Did you want to speak?
Yes, the OPP bill that we receive here in Marmor Lake is based on the number of calls done to our area. So it's not a random number that they give us. They actually charge us by the number of times they have to come into the Marmor Lake jurisdiction. That's basically, they have a base rate plus every call that they have a rate for the calls. So I don't want to tell people not to use the OPP, but that is how they determine what their rate is. And Eric's 100% right. There is no indication that the government is going to step in again and pay. I do believe they paid almost 160,000 to us last year. Not paid to us, paid the OPP on our behalf. There is no indication that they're going to do it again this year. And the original bill, as Nancy put in here, was $1,081,000, which is $100,000 more than this year's. that we've allocated. So just beware that that has not gone away. That was just a one-time deal.
Thanks, Mike. So conservation authorities, again, we don't have any control over the levy. It looks fairly reasonable, but, again, we don't have any, opportunity to, debate it. So does anybody have any comments or questions on conservation authorities? Mike?
Part of our Quinte Conservation increase in costs, I do believe, I can double check with Nancy, is that they are putting money away every year for reconstruction and repairs and maintenance of dams. So we do have a dam, excuse me, out by Deloro. And from the costs I see going through their budget for work on dams, engineering studies on dams, it is a very expensive process. And what they're trying to do is be able to take advantage of WECI funding, which is 50% funding from the provincial government for water control and dams, but they have to have the cash available to meet the 50% of what it's going to cost. So what they're trying to do is put money away going forward. They've got estimates sort of on all these dams in this area, and every municipality is paying their proportion to get to that 50%. So that's where the majority of that $11,000 comes from. And just to make everybody aware, that's going up every year going forward, because what they did is they eased it in. I do believe that the cost next year will probably be at least another $111,000 on top of what we're paying already. So just to be aware that that's going to be coming forward.
Thanks, Mike. Anything further on the Conservation Authority? Okay, moving on to page 18, Animal Control. Any discussion on that, Dane?
Nancy, I don't know if you can speak to this. So, 2024 was 17,000 and the actual was 19,000. Do we pay a flat fee and then a cost per incident?
Councillor Lactos to the chair. Are you referring to the contractor? Is
Yeah,
that what
I'm
you-
sorry. Yes, contracted.
Yes, he's on retainer, and then there's additional when he gets called out or if he's going out to sell dog tags. That's all extra.
So, okay, so, two questions. Is his retainer 21,000?
No, that is where we're going by our actuals and increasing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so he charges us to go out and sell dog tags?
Yes, he does.
Any other comments? Eric?
Just a question, why is the revenue reduced from our 2024 actuals? What was the information that led to that?
No, it's increased.
Nancy, did you want to speak to that?
Well, we're being cautious. Hopefully we'll exceed our revenue again like we did last year. It's revenue neutral now, which means it's not hitting the taxpayer. So any other revenue we get is a bonus. It just depends on how often he gets out and whether the public comes in to purchase tags and stuff. Is really hard to predict. This is relatively new. It's only been happening for the last couple of years. So hopefully our revenue's higher.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nancy.
I'd like to remind the public as well, some of the services that he provides are mandated. We don't have a choice. Fortunately, with the dog tag program, that subsidizes his costs, leaving no tax impact like we see here because of dog tag purchases.
Thanks, Eric. So moving on, building services, page 19. Any comments, questions on that function? Being none? Don't see anything. Okay, we'll move on then. bylaw enforcement. Any comments or questions on that department? None? Okay. Transportation services. Comments, questions on transportation services? None? Ron?
Clarification, is this, are we talking about operations or or capital?
This is operations, is it not?
Yes, correct. We're just dealing with operations right now.
Yeah. So any comments or questions on operations? Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just curious as to, on contracted services. I thought with the machinery and that we'd purchased in the last couple of years that those costs would go down. Just curious as to why it's been bumped up by $70,000 this year. What do we, I thought brushing, I thought we were ahead on brushing. I don't know, just curious as to why an extra 70,000 in brushing when we're doing an awful lot of it ourselves.
Dylan?
Yeah, through the chair. The $70,000 is overall. The actual increase for brushing is 29,000. Ignore the brushing wording and look at it as tree removal. So that's for contracting as an arborist for danger trees.
Thank you, because I know up our way after that storm, there's a lot of trees that need to come down or are going to come down anyways.
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan.
Anybody else have any questions for Dylan? Okay, being none, moving on. Street lights and traffic lights. Any comments, questions? Yes, no, oh, Eric?
Through the chair to Dylan, does the streetlight budget, as you've allocated here, cover repairs of the blue light on the rock cut?
Through the chair, that is correct. It actually may even be replaced today. That just for the record, that it's a provincial thing. We're very lucky. We only have one that went bad. For example, Quinte West had an entire street. So it's any new lights. There's just a bad batch. They're just defective.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that information.
Thank you, Dylan. Ron?
Just a question to Dylan about traffic lights. Dylan, with the traffic lights, does the connecting link payment, can that go towards on the upgrades on traffic light?
Through the chair, if we were to do a connecting link funding program, it could very well. That's correct.
I guess they're working well. I just wondered if they need upgraded, if that would cover that. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. If we were ever to do such a time through a grant, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, moving on to environmental services, page 23. Any comments, questions? Eric?
I know we went over it in the one of the earlier reports, but maybe through the chair, Victor, if you can speak to the landfill track loader situation, as well as why the need for replacement on that now.
The track loader, the 2011 track loader is 14 years old right now. The useful life on it is 15 years. That machine in particular has cost us a fair amount of money over the years recently in equipment repairs. I don't know the exact number, but we could probably get it for you pretty quick. And it is currently broke down again, but we are trying to make it last as long as we can until the new ones can be replaced.
Go ahead, Ron.
Victor, has there ever been a thought on two things, either a contractor doing that work or lease a machine through like say John Deere, Caddy, whoever? Has there ever been any movement on that?
Okay, I'll answer your first question first. The contractor, I have not looked into that, but I mean, the machine is used out there, utilized out there 4 days a week. So to have a contractor come in and it's a specialized, like it's a track loader, so you can't use a rubber tire loader or an excavator because it's used for moving cover material around, loading bins, basic site work that is for landfill. Contractors are not really keen on going in there long term, I found from past experience because of the rough environment that it's working in. As far as leasing, I've never looked into that, but I mean, that could be a possibility. I don't know the cost for leasing, Nancy, if that would, you know, whether, because we're doing a debt for the 200,000 on this.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
propose to do a debenture. We have money in reserves, 200,000 that we can use towards the purchase. So then we're only, assuming long-term debt for 235.
Go ahead, Ron, and then
So-
Mike.
So anyway, further to that, I wonder if we should be looking at throwing request for proposal or a tender out to see if there is in fact a contractor that would purchase or would want to do that work. I'm just hit me this morning and coming in. I wonder if we've ever done that. And the other thing is, if we leased a machine, like a 5-year lease or whatever, is that cheaper to do it that way or to buy outright? Because I'm sure when that machine is done, it's done. We went through a lot of them over the years because of the environment. I know that, but I just wonder if leasing it would be maybe better to do.
Did you want to
I
respond?
guess if
to
you were,
that?
if you look at, sorry, through the chair, Ron, if you go through leasing, I'm not really sure. Like you said, you'd be turning it around every 5 years, so that payment would be, you're paying that every year, I guess, you know. Nancy?
Through the chair, I have no idea what a lease payment would be, for that type of equipment. I think Dylan has a little more experience in that. But we were leasing equipment through the fire department. It was $33,000 a year. So that's more than a debenture payment.
Yeah, through the chair, I can just reference for the lease, for example, when comparing with the, for example, the lease payments compared to the down finance to ourselves, it was quite a substantial difference for the grader, for example,
Right.
for the lease being higher.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just a point of order, did we not already decide we're buying that track loader and that's already been settled there about a month ago? And the other thing is the cost of the track, it's only the cost of the track loader that this is operating. The track loader itself is in capital. So I'm just getting a little confused why we're discussing the track loader now. I thought that had already been done and settled a month ago. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to comment that the debenture payment is in the operational. So I think that's why it's been brought up.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's only the payment or the differential in the payment that's in the operating right here. I understand that, but anyways, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Through the chair, Victor, can you speak to what maintenance schedules you have for equipment at the landfill as well as training for operators?
We have daily, weekly, monthly maintenance on all the equipment out there, and then any new operator that comes on site is trained by the other existing operators that are on site.
Thank you. Anything further? Ron?
I had a conversation with Dylan yesterday not about that, but he mentioned to me, and maybe you can elaborate on this, Dylan, what we talked about the contract that you had.
Yeah, so the company Fast Eddies that did our sand dome demolition, as well as several quotes for other stuff, do look after landfills. They, in the past, have mentioned that it's a possibility for them for emergency use. It might be an option to look into them for certain things. I just don't know about long term. Also going on for the leasing, just as an idea or thought to keep in mind when proposing for an RFP, part of that RFP can include lease comparative to purchase. So it gives you both dual options, exactly as we did with the grader.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, let's move on to water and sewer. Any comments or questions? Seeing none? Okay. Move on to cemetery. Any comments or questions on that? Just making mention that we do have a cemetery board and we're supposed to meet, I don't know, Kristen, is it once or twice a year we're supposed to, not legislated? No. Anyway, just we do, I think we are in needed meeting, but the information pretty much goes year after year as it relates to cemetery. So, go ahead, Mike.
I ask this question every year and I forget every year. Contracted services, I do believe, is that not digging the grave sites out there, or did we take that over and are doing it ourselves?
I'll let Kristen respond.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Stevens. That's correct. We do contract grave digging.
Thanks, Kristen. Anything further on that? Jane?
Well, why, oh, okay, so on contracted services in 2024, actuals were only 1,250 and we budgeted 5,000 in 2024 and we want to budget 5,000 again in 2025. I think the 5,000 is excessive based on history.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Through the chair, there's no way to anticipate how often those services are going to be required.
You don't have a crystal ball?
I do not.
I think when the board met the last time, that was a discussion, was to have that amount of financing available. Like Kristen said, you can't anticipate how that's going to work. And the board, I believe, recommended that be put in the budget.
So one other question, Mr. Ben. So Nancy, this is for you. Because we didn't use the entire 5,000 last year, the balance goes into reserves?
Yes.
And does this cemetery have their own reserve or does it all go into facilities?
Has its own.
It has its own. It's on your reserve sheet that I sent the other day.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
And there's constantly sort of work to be done in the cemetery, like the stones leveled and, there's a certain amount of work that has to happen sort of on an annual basis. And for quite a few years, I don't think there was anything done. And so for the last couple of years, we've been making an effort to fix it a little bit anyway, each year, put a little bit into it because it is imperative that we keep the stones because there's a liability of stone falls on somebody, so that's the other reason why there's some money allocated.
So would the stone repair, does that fall under the contracted services as well?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Through the chair to Councillor Lakatos. No, that line is reserved for grave digging and preparation. So where we have budgeted for, I believe, materials and supplies in the past, it's not that we're fixing the stones ourselves. It is certainly someone that we pay to do that, but more in terms of maintenance than a contracted service.
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce material and supplies to 3,500, being that we have a fairly healthy reserve.
Can I get a seconder for that? Pauline again, seconded. All in favor? Okay, that motion's lost. Moving on to the arena, page 26. Any comments, questions? I think we heard earlier that the arena is scheduled to open for September the 6th. Thank you, Jeff. Any further comments or questions about the budget? Anything, no comments, no questions? Okay. Moving on to Parks and Recreation, page 27. Comments or questions? Jane?
I'm not sure whether this is a Dylan question or a Jeff question. Are we slated to do repairs to the splash pad this summer?
We have a capital, sorry, to the chair. We have a capital, repair of 5,000, just if need be. So a buffer to handle anything that needs to happen.
Okay, so that there's nothing that has to be upgraded this year. Okay.
Anything further? Okay, moving on. Facilities. Comments?
Sorry.
Jane?
Question for Jeff, and I don't know whether it should have come under the other, facilities, wages and benefits, facilities. No, sorry, Memorial Building is the Lions Hall. I was thinking it was another, not the Lions Hall, but the library. No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else have comments or questions? Being none, move on to the library. Comments or questions? Jane?
I support the budget. However, I would like to see if there's a way to, well, I want to make a motion for funding, being as there's $5,640.79 in the reserves. Can we fund the ask with $106,514.21 and pay the balance out of reserves?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Kathy, I'm sorry, not Kathy, sorry, Nancy, sorry.
Through the chair to Councillor Lakatos. Yes, if council decides that's what they would like to do with the reserves for the library, then, and everyone agrees, that's fine.
Okay, so we're not changing the budget amount. We're just changing how we finance. And then because we're financing out of reserve, that would actually change the tax impact, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so I make that motion. Okay, the motion is to support the 2025 ask, the budget of $112,155. However, funding will be $106,514 out of 21 cents out of, pardon? It's numbers. I just get so excited about numbers. Okay, I support $112,155, the ask. I would like it financed by $106,514.21 and topped up with the reserve of $5,640.79 as on the schedule, the reserve schedule. And that would in effect reduce the tax burden, if I'm using the proper word, and remove the library reserve from our schedule.
Did you get that, Kristen? Okay. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Ron? So Eric and then Mike.
Question for Nancy. Is the library, well, two questions. Does the library hold their own reserves? And their own reserves themselves outside of our reserves? And then this reserve account, typically, what would that be used for? Besides
Yes.
funding their operation?
Counselor Dow through the chair. So the reserve that Counselor Lakatos is referring to is been a reserve that has been sitting there for quite some time. As you know, the library's gone out on their own, and we don't see their financials, so I don't know if they have reserves. That would be a question for Kathy. Yeah, so this reserve has been there for a few years.
Thanks. Mike, you had your hand up.
No, Eric asked exactly the same question I was going to ask.
Okay, Jane.
As at the last board meeting, towards the end of 2024, early 2025, there was a $5,000 reserve established within the library. So they do have their own reserve.
Okay, that you confirm that, Kathy? Yeah, thanks. Okay, any other comments or questions on that, Ron?
Yeah, just to be clear for me, this 5,000 is really of no value to anyone. It's just sitting in reserves that they can't use because it's in our reserve, correct? So and it's not affecting their budget, what we're doing. So it's just a housekeeping order, basically,
Exactly.
right? Okay.
Nancy, did you want to confirm that?
Counselor Derry, through the chair. Yeah, so it has been sitting there, but reserves are used for emergencies or if there's something capital they wish to purchase. They don't have access to it unless they do a report to council asking for it. But typically reserves are there for emergency services or like capital projects.
Go ahead, Jane.
I would just like to let Councilor Derry know that at our council meeting about 2 months ago with Baker Tilly confirmed at the end of 2023 that the library had $30,000 in their bank account. And I'm happy to report that they've maintained that and added to it through successful fundraising. So I'm sure that they're able to carry on in capital purchases, and they have slated a capital purchase this year for some equipment.
Eric?
I guess through the chair to Kathy, are you comfortable with the level of reserves that the library holds for themselves to deal with emergency needs?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? That's carried. Okay.
What is the tax rate set at?
Approximately 8.42.
All right.
Okay, next, planning and zoning. Any comments, questions? I think I've kind of kept everybody up to date as much as I can to do with planning services that the county are going to be providing to the lower tier municipalities who wish to participate. And we have indicated that we want their services. And so I think over this is this year's budget, I think going forward, there probably will be some adjustments, but I still think it's the right way to go because really we can't afford to hire our own planner. And actually we have one on staff. Our new CAO is a planner. So I think we've got a definite advantage there, but we are going to be working with what they call the SPARK program through Hastings County. So anything further on that? Okay, seeing none. Economic development. Anything, Eric?
I'd like to make a motion to remove the $9,000 transfer to reserves, and I'll speak to that once it's on the floor.
Can I get a seconder for that, Jane? Go ahead, Eric.
So the Economic Development Department has a pretty healthy reserve. This transfer to reserve and that reserve fund exists to fund the CIP Community Improvement Program that the municipality has, as well as several other programs that the municipality offers for subsidization of things related to economic development that happen. Those programs aren't proving very effective currently and have very low use. So there's not a continued need. We only had one, I think, in the last year. So there's not, I don't feel there's a continued need to build up that reserve to fund that program, and perhaps an opportunity in 2025 to relook at the programs that we do offer.
Thanks, Eric. Any comments, Jane?
What makes up the contracted services of $8,500? Councillor Dowd?
So-
Nancy, or John, did you want to answer?
I
that?
can certainly speak to it, and Nancy can sort of fill in any gaps I may have. So in terms of contracted services, fairly lengthy list, but it's office supplies, printing, costs, computer software packages, postage, municipal events. It also talks about this is materials and supplies and contracted services. Sorry, the notes that I was given. But it looks at things like day of action on litter events, advertising, tourism center merchandise, training, memberships, conferences, any kind of mileage, Farmer Lake branded new business, welcome bags and items, Highway 7 and downtown municipal banners and brackets, replacing banners, flags or poles, graphic design, fairly lengthy list.
Okay. Go ahead.
And just for clarification, the wages is just the one employee that we have at the economic.
Nancy?
To the chair, to Councillor Lakatos, no, that is including the summer student.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Anything else? Okay, moving on. Oh, sorry.
There's a motion on the floor.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot. To remove the total amount, was it, Eric? The total amount of 9,000? Okay, all in favor? That's carried.
If I may, Chair, then maybe the treasurer can also see what the rate is right now.
8.33.
Okay, next is the medical center. Any comments? Okay, none? Okay, moving on. So
If I may, Chair, just to do a check-in, if there's any need for a break. Maybe some need a bio break, I'm not quite sure, but
I'm sorry.
just with the idea that checking to see if council or any members of staff need a break in terms of a recess for
Okay.
a short
Yeah,
while.
this would be a good point. Yeah, okay. So we'll take what, a 10-minute break? Is that good enough?
I
Or
would need a motion for that, Chair.
okay, or let's say back at 11:15, if that's okay. Okay, Ron, and second, Eric, all in favor? Thank you. Oh.
Hi, how you doing? I'm okay. How are you?